The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service presents Let's Talk Finance, a feature exploring the various elements of the economic program.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Finance here on Nationwide at 90 FM. We're talking about public sector transformation for growth and development. My guest, as he has been for the past 2 weeks, Wayne Jones, OD, JP. He's Deputy Financial Secretary out of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. Welcome again, Wayne.
Thank you.
Good. We're going to look at two kernels in the crown of strategic human resource management. But first, I want to start with something on flexi-time, because last week you mentioned a scenario where there were certain functions that you said employees would be able to, if they woke up at 2 a.m. in the morning and decided that they wanted to attack that task from the comfort of their living room on their computer, they could so do. And my ears were pricked, because I'm saying, given that we have the legislation for flexi-time on the books already, when it is that the public sector itself will fully embrace this concept of flexi-time and view work within the context of public sector transformation, view work as something that you do, not somewhere you go.
Right. Let me say, George, that flexible work arrangements already exist in the Jamaican public sector. Each time I hear that question about flexi-time and when are we going to be doing it, I remind people of some areas that flexible work arrangements are in place. The tax office is probably the most known but not acknowledged. The Portmore tax office opens on a Saturday. Mm-hmm. And there are other tax offices across the country that open on a Saturday seasonally. The one at Constant Spring opens, I think, at 8 o'clock. Mm-hmm. The normal working hours for public officers, 8:30 to 5 Monday to Thursday and 8:30 to 4 on a Friday. Mm-hmm. These people who come to work for an 8 o'clock opening are allowed to go home earlier. Mm-hmm. So that's already flexible time. There are some ministries, departments, and agencies that are practicing flexible work arrangement right now. They seek the approval of the ministry responsible for the public service to change those times. Some of them on a seasonal basis, some of them on a more ongoing basis, and they get the approval. What we don't yet have is an overarching policy that says these are the conditions relevant to flexible work arrangement, flexi-time arrangement, as people call it. But the concept is evolving. It's getting more embrace and acceptance and appreciation, especially as we treat the question of diversity in the workplace. Mm-hmm. Those of us who are in the departure lounge and walking closer towards that exit gate would not have joined the system at a time where we could ever contemplate flexible work arrangement. But today, the youngsters who are coming into the labor force want to stay home and work on their computers.
Yes.
And that's something that we have to embrace. The more and more the studies are showing that it is a cost-saving measure too in many organizations, because your overheads go down once the bodies are not in the office. So more of that is happening. But also, very importantly, the use of technology. You know, I was recently having some conversations with some colleagues about the cost of operating your vehicle on the job.
Yes. And
somebody said, but that cost is supposed to be cutting back, because it was in the context of the rising costs at the pump.
Yes.
And somebody was saying, but that cost is supposed to be cutting back because you're supposed to be using teleconference facilities and other such. Mm-hmm. You don't have to travel out to Montego Bay to conduct an interview. You could do that. You know, from the office in Kingston, have the person going to an office or some facility out in Montego Bay and conduct the interview there. So these are flexi-time arrangement that we need to put in place. So it is in place. It's not necessarily formalized and as structured, and that's what we have to do as we seek to rationalize and standardize the operating areas of government and the policies that support those.
Very well. Last week you spoke about pension reform as we looked at strategic human resource management and the reforms being implemented in that regard. This week I want you to tell us a little bit more about you correctly cited, from my perspective, the underappreciation of the administration of the pension reforms. And so I want you to talk about the implementation of the Public Employees Pension Administration System, PEPAS.
Right. So PEPAS is a software that we had hoped to have started the rollout of it already, but it's still in testing mode. Some kinks showing up, and we want to make sure we iron those out before we actually go full force ahead. But the objective of that is to ensure that you get your pension 1 month after your last salary. That's the objective of the new administration system. Right now, we guarantee a turnaround of 4 months, providing, George, that all information that is necessary to make that final decision at the pensions unit are in hand. And I emphasize that because not very many persons know, and of course the pensioner really doesn't care about all of these issues you have, these backroom issues you have. What they want and should have in their hand is their pension when it comes due. But if you take somebody like me, who is in my 37th year of employment to government and having worked at multiple ministries, departments, and agencies, well, there you go. There you go. Upon retirement, I will have to ensure that my service record captures every single thing from the 13th of April 1982 when I started working to whenever I retire. I can assure you that if you look at my service record today, it does not have all of that information.
Yes.
And what you usually find is that that record is not updated until retirement time. So on the PEPAS and my HR Plus, both of which will speak to each other, we will be able to pull the information from the My HR Plus into the PEPAS without relying on the submission of paper from a ministry, department, or agency.
Which takes time and has errors.
Indeed. And important that you speak about errors because a letter changes, just a letter, the wrong letter in somebody's name.
I instead of J.
Yes, changes the thing totally.
Yes.
A digit
Yes.
changes what you're really entitled to because pension is about date. And if the date should have been the 13th of April and it shows the 23rd of April, is a different pension that it turns out.
Yes.
And that back and forth is time consuming. So under this new system, we will have these two softwares speaking together that allow us to be more precise and accurate in the data. And therefore, we will minimize the amount of errors and obviously cut back on the number of months, days that people have to wait. I repeat, the objective is to deliver that pension 1 month after you get your last salary. Because your last salary coincide with your birth date.
Yes.
When your retirement takes effect. And after that, you have nothing coming in. So that is supposed to be replaced by the pension. We want to make sure that there's no gap. And that's what we're working towards.
You speak about ironing out the kinks. Right. The developers of the PEPAS, are these software developers local developers, or is it a hybrid local and overseas, or just foreigners developing it for you?
It's a mix. I can tell it's PwC, Pricewaterhouse, out of India. That's leading the development. But of course, our local experts are working with them. As we do the My HR Plus, we have an overseas developer. But I like to say to people, it is our Jamaicans who wrote that program.
Yes.
Which is the same with the PEPAS. It is we who are doing it, but PwC is leading on it.
And as with all of these systems, the information you feed, the data you feed it, is what it crunches to produce the information. So I say that to say, is there enough integrity in the process of the data collection to suggest that when you pull data from various ministries, departments, or agencies that persons would have worked in order to feed into the system to compute their pension, that data is in order and that you're not expecting any surprises in finding the paper trail?
Right. So there are risks involved with that, and we're trying to manage those risks. You're talking about records going back 20, 30 years, stored in cardboard boxes, stored in cabinet. some no doubt subject to termite exposure
Yes.
and so on. So there's risk. But we have to deal them on a case-by-case basis. I couldn't say to your listeners that there's not going to be an issue. I mean, these are documents that are handwritten.
Yes.
People writing style differ and
Yes.
all that sort of
Paper
thing.
yellows, so you can't make
Indeed.
out what was
right.
written.
So we have those issues, but we're working through them, and that is why we want to iron out the kinks to make sure, because we don't want to use a system and grant somebody a pension that they are not entitled to, or they should be getting more.
Yes.
And then recovery becomes an issue.
Yes, yes.
So you want to make sure as best as possible that you eliminate or mitigate against those risks.
Finally, we have about 2 minutes left. We're in the implementation of the Special Early Retirement Program, or the SERP.
Right. So the SERP came and went. We got good take-up. Haven't yet finalized the numbers because there are still some residue that the team is working through. But it went smoothly.
Yes.
Let me say that. Those public officers who took the opportunity, I haven't heard of any complaint. Let me just remind your listeners that the Special Early Retirement Program was intended to contribute to the management of the wage bill. It is not the panacea to us getting to 9% wage to GDP. It is part of the basket of actions that we're taking.
Yes.
It has made its contribution. We will have final report in another couple of weeks, and so we will know exactly the numbers. But, a question that people ask, was it successful? I say yes.
Yes.
It has to be successful, even if it was one person who took it up.
Yes.
Because it's a voluntary separation program. People stand up and say they want to go. And these are people, by the way, who normally would have been able to apply for early retirement because of the age cohort.
Yes.
So it went well. We are presently working through the provision of their pension now, which is a normal part. But they would have gotten their incentive payments and they would have gotten their pay for vacation leave to the extent that they had vacation leave in stock. At the end of it, we will review and determine if this is something, as many have been asking, that needs to be renewed. And many have been asking that the age fall below what we used the last time. But we consider it a success.
All right, finally, on this day in sports, based on where we are with public sector transformation, beyond 2030, I'm going to say 2035, if we continue apace with the moves that are being made under the umbrella of public sector transformation, will Jamaica get there by 2035, Wayne Jones?
I think so. It's always difficult to measure success for activities like these, and this is why we try to identify those goals that we would like to score. One such, I said earlier, is people wanting to do business with the Jamaican public sector.
Yes.
People wanting to pay their taxes because it's easy so to do.
Yes.
People wanting to come to work in the public sector. People looking to graduate from university and making the Jamaican Jamaican public sector labor force a place they want to stop before they go on to anywhere, as it was some time ago.
Yes.
And if we can achieve those, if we can score those goals, then we certainly would have won the match up to that point. We may not win the tournament,
Yes.
but it is, as you know, a sportsman, it takes one victory at a time
Yes.
to get you to the podium to collect that gold medal.
Excellent. So thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure always.
Wayne Jones, Deputy Financial Secretary of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. He's been with me talking about public sector transformation for growth and development. This has been Let's Talk Finance.
That was Let's Talk Finance, brought to you by the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service.